So this is our final week of Look for the Light, and this week we're going to be looking at the light of restoration. So in English you might remember learning about the narrative arc, which looks a bit like this. And this is a model which a book tends to follow. So we start off with the setting, where the main characters of the book are introduced and the scene is set. Then we have conflict, and we have rising action. Now, the conflict and the rising action are building up to the climax. After the climax, things tend to sort of calm down, and we end with the resolution. So how does the Bible fit into this narrative arc? Well, the setting is obviously creation, where the scene is set. We've got creating the world, and we're introduced to the two main characters, which are God and mankind. Then the conflict, we've got the fall, where Adam and Eve disobey God and they're kicked out of the Garden of Eden and sin enters the world. Then the rising action, we've got the incarnation, the birth of Jesus. So then the climax would be the resurrection, because everything up until that point has been building up to this moment where Jesus defeats death. So what's the resolution? Well, the resolution is found in the book of Revelation, right at the very end of the Bible, and that is the new creation. So this series, we've traced the theme of light through the whole story of the Bible. So let's see where each of the different weeks fit in. So we had the light of new beginnings, and that was looking at the book of Genesis with the creation, and we looked at the story of Noah. So that was that first section. Then we looked at the light of guidance. And that was the Exodus. And that was God leading his people by a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. Then we had the light of power. Where we looked at the story of Gideon. Then we had, for our carol service, we looked at the light of hope, which was looking at Isaiah and the prophecies and then the birth of Jesus. So now we're left with the final week, where we're going to look at this section, and we're going to focus mainly on the resolution, the new creation. The book of Revelation focuses on our end goal, or our end purpose, which is to be reunited with God. So let's read Revelation 21 and see what it says about the resolution, the new creation.
This reading is from Revelation chapter 21, the New Jerusalem. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the old heaven and the old earth had disappeared, and the sea was also gone. And I saw the holy city, the New Jerusalem, coming down from God out of the heavens like a bride beautifully dressed for her husband. I heard a loud shout from the throne, saying, "Look, God's home is now among his people. He will live with them, and they will be his people. God himself will be with them. He will wipe every tear from their eye, and there'll be no more death, or sorrow, or crying or pain. All these things are gone forever. And the one sitting on the throne said, "Look, I am making everything new." And then he said to me, "Write this down, for what I tell you is trustworthy and true." And he then said, "It is finished. I am the Alpha, the Omega, the beginning and end. To all who are thirsty I give freely from the springs of the water of life. All those who are victorious will inherit all these blessings, and I will be their God, and they will be my children. But cowards, unbelievers, the corrupt, murderers, the immoral, those who practice witchcraft, idol worshippers, and all liars, their fate is in the fiery lake of burning sulphur. This is the second death." Then one of the 7 angels who held the 7 bowls containing the 7 last plagues came down to me. "Come with me, I will show you the bride, the wife of the Lamb." So he took me in the spirit to a great high mountain, and he showed me the holy city, Jerusalem, descending out of heaven from God. It shone with the glory of God and sparkled like a precious stone, like jasper, as clear as crystal. The city wall was broad and high, with the 12 gates guarded by the 12 angels, and the names of the 12 tribes of Israel were written on the gates. There were 3 gates on each side, east, north, south, and west. The wall of the city had 12 foundation stones, and on them were written the names of the 12 apostles of the Lambs. The angel who talked to me held in his hand a gold measuring stick to measure the city, its gates, and its walls. When he measured it, he found that it was a square, as wide as it was long. In fact, its length and width were the height of each 1,400 miles. He then measured the walls and found them to be 216 feet thick, according to the human standard used by the angel. The wall was made of jasper, and the city was pure gold, as clear as glass. The wall of the city was built on foundation stones, inlaid with 12 precious stones. The first was jasper, the second was sapphire, the third was agate, the fourth was emerald, the fifth onyx, the sixth carnelian, the seventh chrysolite, the 8th beryl, the 9th topaz, the 10th chrysoprase, the 11th jacinth, the 12th amethyst. The 12 gates were made of pearls, each gate from a single pearl, and the main street was pure gold, as clear as glass. I saw no temple in the city, for the Lord God Almighty and the Lamb are its temple. And the city had no need for a sun or a moon, for the glory of God illuminates the city and the Lamb in its light. The nations will walk in its light, and the kings of the world will enter the city in all their glory. Its gates will never be closed at the end of the day, because there is no night there. And all the nations will bring their glory and honour the city. Nothing evil will be allowed to enter, nor anyone who practices shameful idolatry or dishonesty, but only those whose names are written in the Lamb's book of life.
Revelation 21 verse 1 says, "Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the old heaven and the old earth had passed away." God makes an entirely new creation. It's worth noting that when it says heaven, it doesn't mean heaven is in a place that we go to when we die, but rather heavens as in the sky or the earth's atmosphere. Also, the word which has been translated into new is the ancient Greek word kain. I have no idea whether I'm pronouncing that correctly, but it means new in character or fresh. It doesn't mean recent or new in time. This new earth and heaven isn't just the next heaven and the next earth, but it's a better heaven and a better earth. In Genesis, God creates the world. He creates the moon, the stars, he creates animals, and he creates Adam and Eve. But then Adam and Eve eat from the forbidden tree. Sin is introduced into the world. Jesus dies on the cross, but there's still sin in the world. The world's still broken. It's not perfect. But there's a promise of a new heaven and a new earth. where there is no sin or evil, a promise that we will be restored to living with God like Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. This promise of a renewed creation was prophesied in Isaiah 65, verse 17, where it says, "Look, I am creating new heavens and a new earth, and no one will even think about the old ones anymore." What stood out to me was the line, "No one will even think about the old ones anymore," because how many times have you thought back longingly on the past? Especially this year during the pandemic, I know that I've looked back on previous years when I'd never even heard of the word coronavirus and longed to go back in time to escape the present day. But the fact that it says no one will even think about the old ones anymore, to me suggests that this new creation is going to be so amazing and so beautiful that we're not even going to look back on our old lives in the old creation. Revelation 21 goes on to say that there will also be no sea in this new creation. Although this might seem irrelevant that there's going to be no sea, the sea was seen as a place of separation and evil. The sea has already been the source of the beast in Revelation 13, where the beast from the sea waged war against God's holy people and conquered them. And the sea was the place of the dead in Revelation 20, where the dead were given up by the sea to be judged. So when it says that the sea will also be gone in this new creation, it doesn't necessarily mean that there will be no bodies of water, but rather that there will be no separation between God and humans, and there will be no more evil. Then the holy city, the New Jerusalem, descends down from heaven. The New Jerusalem is a city, a community of the people of God. For many of us, we've learnt the importance of people this year. When lockdown hit, many of us felt isolated and alone. But this New Jerusalem isn't a place of isolation. It's a hub full of people worshipping God. This also shows that although this New Jerusalem will be a lot like the Garden of Eden, it will be something entirely unique. Because in the Garden of Eden, there was only Adam and Eve. Larger communities of people didn't come until after the fall, when sin was introduced into the world. So in this New Jerusalem, we have something completely unique and bigger and better than we've ever seen before.
I heard a loud shout from the throne saying, "Look, God's home is now among his people. He will live with them and they will be his people. God himself will be with them."
The tabernacle in the Old Testament was a tent which travelled with the Israelites through their exodus, and it was a representation of God's dwelling place on earth. But when it mentions tabernacle in Revelation, it's demonstrating the reality of God's presence with us in the New Jerusalem. Later in Revelation 21, we are told that the city is a square, with its length being as great as its breadth. This mirrors the holy place within the tabernacle called the Holy of Holies, which was a perfect square. In the Old Testament, only the high priest was allowed to enter the Holy of Holies, and only one day a year. But in this New Jerusalem, the whole city is a square. The whole city is the Holy of Holies. And everyone is allowed in, not just the high priest. But then it says, "I saw no temple in the city, for the Lord God Almighty and the Lamb are its temple." Not having a temple in a city would have been unthinkable. But John goes on to explain that the Lord God and the Lamb are its temple. The temple has not been removed, but simply has been expanded to encompass everything in this New Jerusalem. In the tabernacle, God ordered the people of Israel to keep the lamps burning continuously, meaning it was always light in the tabernacle. But in the New Jerusalem, we are told that there is no need of sun or moon, for the glory of God illuminates the city and the Lamb is its light. So in the New Jerusalem, there's no need for any earthly light, because the light of God is enough. In Revelation 22, the new creation is further described. So let's read Revelation 22, verses 1 to 5.
This reading is from Revelation chapter 22, verses 1 to 5. Then the angel showed me a river with the water of life, clear as crystal, flowing from the throne of God and of the Lamb. It flowed down the centre of the main street. On each side of the river grew a tree of life, bearing 12 crops of fruit, with a fresh crop each month. The leaves were used for medicine to heal the nations. No longer will there be a curse upon anything, for the throne of God and of the Lamb will be there, and his servants will worship him. And they will see his face, and his name will be written on their foreheads. And there will be no night there, no need for lamps or sun, for the Lord God will shine on them, and they will reign forever and ever.
Here we see that there is a river flowing through the city. Unlike the sea, rivers have been used by prophets as an expression of richness, provision, and peace. This river of provision and peace flows straight from the throne of God. So it's a constant reminder that God is enough and he will provide, and that it's peaceful in this new creation. Then the story of the Bible comes full circle, because again we see the tree of life, which first appeared in Genesis when God told Adam and Eve not to eat from it. This verse is a little confusing because it's hard to picture, but if you have a pen and paper handy, maybe you can try drawing what you think this landscape might look like. But we end in this new creation, which mirrors the Garden of Eden. Finally, mankind has been reunited with their Creator, but the new creation has been restored and renewed. It's a new and improved version of the Garden of Eden. It's not the same. So the resolution of the story of the Bible is this new creation, where resurrection bodies will enjoy a perfect new world, the New Jerusalem, which is the community of God's people, and the new temple, where the whole world is a temple of God's presence.
The wall of the city was built on foundation stones, inlaid with 12 precious stones. The first was jasper, the second was sapphire, the third was agate, the fourth was emerald, the fifth onyx, the sixth carnelian, the seventh chrysolite, the eighth beryl, the ninth topaz, the 10th chrysoprase, the 11th jacinth, the 12th amethyst. There were 3 gates on each side, east, north, south, and west. Then the angel showed me a river with the water of life, clear as crystal, flowing from the throne of God and of the Lamb. It flowed down the centre of the main street. On each side of the river grew a tree of life, bearing 12 crops of fruit, with a fresh crop each month.
We're going to go back into a time of worship now, so during the next song, perhaps you'd like to reflect on what you think this new creation is going to be like.